Susan, of course, is representing the constituency of one of the Bolton West, or would like to represent Bolton West, which is one of those bellwether constituencies. We'll come to Susan in a moment. First, let's go to David Ottewell, because if you want to get in touch, you can do. You can Twitter and you can email, and David is rafting through them for us. David, how do we get in touch, and what are people saying?
Well, the best way, you can either email, which the best address for that is today@channelm.co.uk, or I'm covering it live on Twitter, and the address for that is twitter.com/David Ottewell.
And what are people saying so far? Because they're keen already to get in on the act.
Well, I'm glad Susan's arrived, because somebody's already put something on the Twitter feed asking about the Tory support for and how much they'll support the Metrolink extension should they win the next election.
Well, let's ask her. Would the Tories support the Metrolink extension should you win the next election?
Well, first of all, I have to say the reason I was late this morning was because of the Metro, and it's been appalling all week. I mean, there hasn't been any specific announcement on supporting the Metrolink extension, but there's no doubt about it that transport is absolutely key to places like Greater Manchester, their economy growing, so...
Yeah, transport, very important. I mean, you and Mr Stringer, famously against the TIF bid. It's not often you see the two of you united on a particular policy. But what do you think needs to be done? I mean, what would you... transport is very important. It's all very well to say that, but people need more than that, you know, because you've talked about how this party conference has given us a raft of policies. Some transport policies for our patch would be nice.
Yeah, indeed. And, I mean, there's already a transport fund in place for Greater Manchester and certain extensions planned, but certainly there needs to be more in the future. I mean, the last time that there was any work on the Metrolink was, of course, when it was first built. The recent improvements are the first since it was actually installed in 1991, I think it was, under a Tory government, I might add.
I thought you might. Graham, your thoughts on the transport infrastructure, the state of it and the way it might be should the Labour Party continue in power?
Well, the record of the Labour Party, I mean, the West Coast Main Line has been improved. There's £7.5–8 billion of investment in that. As far as transport overall is concerned, I think any political party that's in power, we in Manchester are in for a fight, because there are going to be cuts. We can argue about when they should be and what they should be. Nobody sane thinks they aren't going to happen. Because of the commitments of transport expenditure in London and South East with Crossrail, Thameslink, the improvement of the tube. If we don't get our act together, and I suspect it will have to be cross-party over that period of time, whichever government there is, we will not be getting the investment we need. And that's what I will be saying in the general election. We need to, and it's brutal, but we need to stop some of the investment in the South East. Otherwise, they will be getting 95% of the pie, and we will be getting effectively nothing.
Yeah. So, John, if all three of you are returned, will there be cross-party support for Greater Manchester over and above the South? Will you be able to put aside your political differences?
I think there's always been some cross-party support for better investment in the North West and particularly in Greater Manchester. But I think one of the problems is in an economic downturn, transport's one of those easy targets and very often loses out. We in the Liberal Democrats have put forward proposals for a future transport fund, which would invest a significant amount of money in heavy rail and light rail. And that would be paid for by a lorry road user charging scheme and an additional tax on non-lifeline domestic flights.
We know how popular road charging schemes are in Greater Manchester, John. It's difficult. And Roger Jones is with us, who currently the North West Rail campaign and a transport expert. Your thoughts, Roger? Because I mean, until recently, you were running the Greater Manchester Passenger Transport Executive. Now, no longer. I mean, you're passionate about transport here.
Yeah, it's gone downhill since I left.
You might say that, I couldn't.
No. Well, I think what I would say is at the last general election, none of the party leaders raised transport as a major issue. And I think probably because they were all frightened of raising it in case it rebounded on them in some way. So I think it would be very... it would be great news for transport if we could have it as a general election issue. The second
It's a green issue, though, isn't it? So presumably the parties want to take it on board because it's good to be seen to get people out of cars and onto the rails.
Well, it is, but when Graham said there's going to be cuts, I don't think there's if you listen to George Osborne, the other day at the conference, he was making it clear that there are going to be big cuts in public services. Now, if there are, and if they try and protect education with teachers or health service with nurses and doctors, you can guarantee a disproportionate cut will come to transport. And just to give you an example, if 7 out of 10 journeys are by bus in Greater Manchester, I think you'll find there'll be a cut in the subsidy to the bus operators. What that will mean is less bus services, and especially the further the further away you are from the town centre here in Manchester, the more likely it is your bus service could be cut. So I'm not trying to frighten anybody, I'm just saying these are the realities. If we really cut public transport budgets, then there will be less services.
Dr Russell, prioritising of public spending is going to be key, isn't it? Because we all know the country's in astronomical debt. So it's not about where you spend, it's where you cut. I mean, how do the political parties decide? Is it all focus groups and the like?
Well, primarily, yes. Although you know, on the kind of normal political business cycle, there are certain themes that are cut from time to time. Every 12 years or so, military expenditure is cut. Education, particularly higher education, is often in the far end line. Transport could well be one of those things where you just see kind of subsidies withdrawn because it's a relatively
short-term view, though, isn't it? Because transport infrastructure has to be invested in now to benefit us in 10, 15, 20 years.
The problem is that politics and elections are never anything other than short-term, and you know, and it's never more than the next contest, because there's always a plebiscite, a public opinion, a referendum coming up where politicians have to put themselves up to account, and so that some of those easy decisions are made that perhaps are to the detriment of long-term planning. OK, well, Mr Osborne has laid out his policies and has said we're all in this together. We'll discuss that possibly and more as we come back after this break. Stay with us.